Well, before I start, I've got to go back to that Mod Squad comment. And I'm not for sure if I'm Clarence Williams III or Peggy Lipton, but that having been said, thank you for having me, Charlie, and I really appreciate you putting this together, because obviously, not only with the work that I do in my volunteer role with the school board, but also the work that I do in my paying job in the Oak Ridge neighborhood, it's a critically important issue and requires not only opportunities like this to get together, but other opportunities to really engage in the important conversation. It's also good to see my friend Ralph Smith back in Des Moines. Great having you here, and I look forward to talking with you a little later. You know, as I was thinking about this presentation, I thought back to nearly 60 years ago in the Brown versus the Board of Education ruling. I'm from the great state of Kansas, and so I obviously know a lot about that, as do many people in this room. But if you think about that ruling and you think about where we are in 2011, the struggle really still continues to fulfill what was set out as the expectation of the Brown decision. I think that there clearly is mounting statistical evidence that documents the achievement gap between minority and majority students. And the gap is even more evident when you begin to think through and think about kindergarten readiness and kindergarten development. I agree with much of what Tom Urban said about the importance of early childhood. But even when you begin to think through and think about the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, I think it's clearly important that we also begin to think through and think about the impacts of economic condition, which I think are an even greater indicator of success educationally than race. Research shows that the education of parents, their level of education, also their economic self-sufficiency also are great indicators of success for. And so when you combine all of those factors together, it just creates a whole different level of discussion that allows us to begin those important conversations that focus on each and every factor as a way to begin to address reforms that I think are critical to our children's success. My husband often tells me that the four most important words in the I have a dream speech are not I have a dream. The four most important words are now is the time. And I think in so many ways, with the work that Linda and the governor have done in advancing the blueprint, we now have a great opportunity to not only begin the discussion, but to also respond to the needs of our children when it comes to our education. So now is the time to not only talk the talk, but more importantly to walk the walk. And I think that as we approach the 2012 legislative session, it will become important for us to not only talk the talk, but force our legislators to walk the walk. And everyone in this room is an advocate. And I think that we have to assume our advocacy responsibility when it comes to advancing an agenda that is about educational reform that will have long-standing, long-term implications for all of our children. As I think about the work that I do in Des Moines Public Schools, I think it's really important to kind of add another element to the discussion. And in order to kind of illuminate that, I thought it would be important to share with you some statistical information that I think helps put the challenges we have, especially in the Des Moines Public Schools, into context. We average a little over 30,000 annually in our enrollment. 50% of our students in Des Moines Public Schools are minority. 60% of our student population is eligible for free and reduced lunch. And roughly 16% of our student population are English language learners. And to help you put that into context, in 2000, our English language learner enrollment was a little over 2,600. And today, in 2011, our English language learner enrollment is in excess of 5,100 students, which is a huge growth, and I really think points to the huge demographic shifts that we are seeing not only in our urban settings, but also throughout the state of Iowa. when we begin to talk about third grade literacy and third grade reading proficiency, not only are we challenged by the issues of poverty and race, but we now are also challenged throughout the state of Iowa around the issues of culture, ethnicity, and language, which now requires us to rethink a lot of our paradigms around teaching and how we truly prepare our students to be able to be successful. So with that as background, I think that clearly it's important that we think through and think about deliberate and sustained strategies that will address our educational challenges and the needs of our students well into the future. So never one to be short on solutions, I thought I would share with you a few strategies that I think are critically important, not only short-term, but long-term. One thing that I think is important is setting high expectations for what all children can learn and achieve. Too often we make too many assumptions about children in poverty and what they can achieve educationally, and we've got to get away from that. Another strategy that I think is important is hands-on professional development and ongoing supports that allow us to provide better interactional opportunities and educational supports, not only for our low SES students, but also for our ELL families and their students. Another strategy that I think goes back to how we fundamentally prepare our teachers is working with our colleges and universities. They are responsible for preparing our teachers to move into the settings that are now created within our school systems, and providing an opportunity for greater focus on educating children in poverty and also the larger number of ELL students is, I think, very important. I think there needs to be a recognition, and I think that Ralph talked about this, but schools can't do this alone. They cannot solve all of the problems that all of our students present on a day-to-day basis, nor should they be expected to. Community-based strategies and working in conjunction with community-based organizations, including the faith community, will be critically important to our students' success. We've talked a lot about after-school programs, and I believe Ralph talked also about out-of-school programs. But working with those community-based organizations, many of them represented in this room, will allow us to not only meet the needs of our students on a regular basis, but also meet the needs of making those connections between school and home, where I think community-based organizations have the greatest opportunity to make a difference. Another key strategy is establishing family literacy initiatives, providing those opportunities for parental engagement and strategies that not only equip our adults with the tools they need, but also assist them in helping their children to be successful. And then again, and I think I'm piggybacking a little bit on what Doug said, we've got to challenge our corporate community and our funders to become part of the solution. It has to extend beyond the United Ways of the world and go into our corporations and into our other community-based foundations to ask them to help fund the movement. Our ability to educate their future workforce is critical to their long-term success, so they clearly need to be a player. And then, of course, beyond the existing preschool opportunities, creating and funding universal pre-K that is all day. We're moving children into all-day kindergarten, but they've only been in half-day universal pre-K. And I'm looking out at the audience to Nancy Sebring, Superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools, and another initiative that she has talked about is making universal pre-K available for third graders, so that we have that continuum that gives students 2 years of opportunity to fully be prepared and school ready when they move into our traditional school settings. So with that, I'm going to conclude by challenging everybody to remember that now is the time.